Hello and welcome to this week's Gersnet Podcast. So, in a season characterised by low points, Rangers plumb new depth with an embarrassing 5-0 defeat at Celtic Park. As usual, we'll be dissecting the match, looking at all the main talking points, asking where it all went wrong and desperately searching for any positives from an appalling afternoon's work. Then we're going to move into more optimistic ground, with strong reports suggesting that our managerial search is finally over. We'll ask if Steven Gerrard is the Scouse saviour or an unnecessary risk by a board under pressure. My name's Ross Bennett and I'll be your Gersnet Podcast host this week. And joining me on the pod, we've got David Fraser and Gersnet Commander-in-Chief Stewart Franklin. Gents, how are we feeling after that?
Well, pretty low, Ross, to say the least. Just another bad day at the office for the team and the manager.
Yeah, I think David summed that up there. It's difficult to be very positive or feel very good this evening, unfortunately.
Maybe that's the problem with us recording this on a Sunday night. By the time it's you guys are hearing us, you might have gotten over it a wee bit, but it's still very, very raw, very tender for us this evening. But right, let's dive straight into it and let's go over the wreckage of that game. Right, Stewart, Murty put out a team that was perhaps different in personnel with Jack Anick in goal, Cummings up top and Andrew Halliday back at left back. But the setup and the structure was kind of trademark Graham Murty. What did you make of the team selection today?
I don't think I could argue with the team that much, to be honest, or the setup. I mean, I wrote the Gersnet preview this week, and I think, and I said it was most likely that we were going to go back to the 4-2-3-1 compared to the formation that we deployed at the game at Hampden. And so it wasn't a surprise to see the team. I wasn't convinced by starting with Cummings, but I can understand the reasoning behind it. Obviously, Halliday came in for the injured Declan John, and to be honest, as I said, I didn't really argue with the team, the starting lineup, but it's just the way that the lads started the game and went through the match. It just didn't work. I mean, I don't think any formation would have helped the first 10 or 15 minutes especially. I mean, Celtic started very well. I think I have to give them a bit of credit. They really did blow us away. But to be fair, we didn't concede anything at that point. Yeah, honestly, it was watching school kids, the way we were trying to close them down and press them. I think we all wanted that after the game at Hampden. But yeah, there has to be a discipline in how you do it, and you have to be able to time the closing down right. And we were just doing it all wrong. It was like young lads under 10s all chasing the ball and then leaving other Celtic players unmarked. And to be honest, they were cutting through us at will for long periods of the game because of that. Yeah,
I know. I see what you're saying, and I read your preview before the game and saw that. David, Frankie says there that he doesn't necessarily disagree with how the team was picked or the formation of the team and the structure of it, but we watched that Celtic side destroy us 4-0 a couple of weeks back, and they dominated us in midfield. So was it a bit naive or predictable what was going to happen going with a two-man midfield again? Were we doomed from the start, and were we always going to be overrun in midfield when we went with two men there?
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-evident that the two men in the middle of the park, you're going to leave yourself open to being exposed. But I think the players have obviously, they've been used to playing that system, Ross. And I'm fed up repeating myself here, but when you've got players that are as limited as the Rangers players tend to be, trying to incorporate a new tactic into their thinking is pretty difficult to achieve. And you've seen that at the Cup semi at Hampden, where they tried to adopt a three-man midfield and they couldn't get to grips with it. But having said that, I think you've got to acknowledge that Celtic have got better players. They're certainly better coached, and hand in heart, I think that with the best will in the world, I think you could have flooded the middle of the park with 6 guys today. I just think that the Celtic players and manager are in the Rangers collective psyche, and I think you've seen there today that they're fighting an uphill battle right from the first whistle. And Stewart says there, I mean, the they did quite well to hold out, but it was backs to the wall. And when the first goal went in, I think it was just a case of, how many could this possibly be?
To be fair, after they scored the first goal, we came into the game a wee bit. And Holt had a half-decent chance. He went clean through, a decent strike. Gordon probably could have threw his hat in it. He made a good save. And then I think, what was it, Windass, it got slipped into the channel. And I think if he'd cut it back earlier, I think Cummings had an open goal at the back post. And at that point, the game would have been 1-1. And I would have liked to have seen how Celtic would have reacted to that. But just as you thought we were going to get into half-time, 1-0, and you're thinking, let's try and reorganise, come back out and have a go at them. Second half, we just gave them 2 dreadful goals. Both goals, I think it was Graham Dorrans that gave the ball away in the middle of the park. And Dorrans, as when it came from the higher leagues in the English divisions, and you're expecting a lot more out of him in these games. And today, it's not fair to single anybody out, but he was utterly atrocious. He gave the ball away time after time, and as I say, he cost the second and third goals. And as much as we're going to go on and have a go at Murray and other players, as a manager, you just can't account for individual mistakes like that. It's completely unacceptable, and to be honest, it's inexplicable when it comes to somebody like Dorrans, who's been there and done it against the very best teams.
I think you're right. It's harsh to single out players on most occasions, but we almost kind of wouldn't be doing our duty here on this podcast if we didn't take a look at some of the individual performances that were put in today and ask serious questions. And the obvious starting point actually there is Graham Dorrans, because you're right. He's been there in the Premier League and down in England, and he's done it. He's played against some of the biggest teams, but he wasn't the only shocking performer out there today. I thought that Tav had one of his worst games in a Rangers shirt, and there was a sort of 20 or 30 minute period where he couldn't make a 2-yard pass. He couldn't control a ball. It was pinging off him like a bouncy ball. David, you made a point there about, you mentioned the psyche of these players, and we've seen a number of times now that the players seem to bottle it and crumble under the pressure of playing against Celtic. Like we said, Dorrans was appalling, Tav was appalling, McCrory and Martin were run ragged in the centre of defence. Is it that these players don't have the bottle for the big games, or is it more of a general question of consistency?
It's difficult to put your finger on one single thing, Ross. It's a combination of factors. You've got players that, again, I'm repeating myself here, are limiting ability. Let me go through the side one by one. You got Jack Annick making his Old Firm debut. He's not played a lot of football since he's came to Rangers. You've got James Tavernier at right back. I concur with you. He's probably one of his worst games in the Rangers shirt for quite a while. Then moving into the centre of defence, you've Ross McCrory, and I think you've seen, leaving aside the fact he might not be 100% fit, I think you've seen his inexperience there today with how his distribution with the ball and some of his judgment in terms of making tackles. Then you Russell Martin. I'm not going to labour a point with Russell Martin. In my opinion, he shouldn't be anywhere near a Rangers jersey. Andy Halliday obviously dropped in at the deep end with Declan John breaking his wrist. So again, a thankless task for the boy. He's not a natural defender, but he tried. But ultimately, he's not good enough. Then you move into the middle of the park. Stewart's, mentioned there, Graham Dorrans. Graham Dorrans signed for the club, and I think a lot of Rangers fans expected a lot of the boy, given where he'd been previously. But I've been watching the English Championship, and people seem to think that Graham's, should be further forward in the team. A number 10. The guy's legs have gone. He's had a lot of bad injuries, Graham Dorrans, and it's taken its toll. In my opinion, they shouldn't have signed Graham Dorrans, and I can see the writing on the wall. When they signed him, that this guy, everybody thought this guy was going to, win games on his own, and he can do that with certain teams in the Scottish Premier League. But when at the top end of the table, with it in the business end of the league, he's going to struggle. And you move to others of the park like Candace and Jamie Murphy. Again, the two players, don't have a great game today. Limited players, in my opinion. And then you get Josh Windass, Jason Holt, guys that are, they're not great players, let's be honest. And then, Jason Cummings through the middle, asked to to hold the ball up and combat guys like Dedrick Boyata who tower above. I mean, Jason Cummings is probably about 5'8". He's painfully lacking in that sharpness because he's rusty, and I think the guy's low in confidence. You could see with some of the shots he was taking, he wasn't really connecting with it, and I think it's just a combination of things, Ross, and that's before you even get to the manager.
Actually, I think as well what's important to think about is that, and it's linked to the manager as well, is that the decision making out on the park was abysmal. You know, there were times when one thing that really sticks in my mind is a harmless ball coming over the top from the Celtic defence, and all that Tav has to do is, Tav is favourite for the ball every day of the week, is either bring it down and clear it or knock it back to the goalkeeper, and he sort of tries to flick it over the Celtic striker. And you think the pressure that we're under in that cauldron of Celtic Park and the abuse that the players are going to be getting from their fans, why would you take risks? Frankie, is that something that needs to be coached into these players, how to make better decisions on the park? Is it that we haven't got players who are, you know, bright enough and have the right football and brain to make the right decision? And, you know, when you're playing against teams like Ross County or Partick Thistle, and to a degree a poor Hearts team, you're not going to get found out. But if you don't have that sharp footballing intellect, you get found out against teams like Celtic. Is that decision making an issue for us?
I think it just comes down to the belief of the players. I think Tav is one of the few guys in the team that does have that self-belief. I think he thinks he's a good player. Whether he is or not remains to be seen. I think since he's been made captain, I think he's actually been off form the last 2 or 3 months. I think before the turn of the year, he was, or certainly up until the end of February anyway, he was maybe a good chance of being our player of the year. Since then, he's struggled a wee bit. But in terms of the question you're asking about whether or not these guys are the decision makers good enough, it isn't. It's really poor, and it's continually poor. It's been something that's annoyed me for long enough. They didn't want to play the simple pass, the shoot when they shouldn't shoot. It's this type of thing. It's not just young laddies we're dealing with here. They're experienced guys, and yet they keep making the same mistakes. So it's only assume that, well, one, the manager isn't good enough, and two, they're not clever enough to be managed properly.
Well, I'm glad you've brought up the manager there, because I'm not sure if either of you guys saw the interview that he had before the game, Murty had with Rangers TV, and he was kind of asked a question along the lines of, what have you got to prove today? Do you have anything to prove to the fans? And Murty said, I have nothing to prove. The players step out over the white line and they've got to prove to themselves and prove to the fans that they deserve to be here and they deserve to wear the shirt. And that struck me as kind of shirking responsibility a bit. And look, it's not my fault if the players don't perform. The players have to take responsibility for that. Frankie, starting with yourself, how culpable is Murty for today's result?
Well, he's a manager, so I mean, we went 70 minutes before he made a change. And I mean, we were 5-0 down after 52 minutes, and you, me, everybody else could see. Again, I'm sorry to single out Donna's, but Donna's was having an absolute nightmare. Bring on Docherty, bring on Rossiter, bring on somebody that's going to actually be able to keep the ball, and you've got Goss there as well. Keep the ball and get us a platform and a foothold in the game, and that's what we didn't have in the first half, or certainly out with maybe the 10-minute period before Celtic scored their second and third goals. And so at that point, the manager has to be criticised, and this has been an ongoing thing. I've mentioned it here several times since we started the podcast. It doesn't make subs, it doesn't change his team. So this is what happens. So when players do get injured, guys like Halliday, Cummings, they come in, they're not fit. So I mean, you can see it today. They were a yard slower than Celtic. Beata was coming clean through Cummings every single time, just because he couldn't live with the big guy's pace or reading the game or sharpness or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, it's the same thing. He brings on Morelos and takes off Windass and goes 4-4-2. We're 5-0 down. I mean, the game's gone. What's the point in bringing on Morelos? He was always going to end up booked, because he didn't have the temperament for these games, it seems. I thought Morelos did quite well when he came on for 10 or 15 minutes, but he was lucky not to be sent off. So that's poor management. it's a really silly decision. In terms of the interview that Murty gave and during the week and in the one pre-match this weekend, clearly the guy's upset at the criticism he's received in recent weeks, and I can understand that to a certain extent. He's been hung out to dry by this Rangers board, so I think there's been an element in the guy trying to protect his reputation, and I can get that. I can sympathise with that. However, been beat 4-0 by Celtic 2 weeks ago, and then exactly the same, but could have been 8-0 easily today. His reputation's gone, certainly in the eyes of the Rangers fans.
I think you're right, and that his reputation's gone. David, following on from that, should Murty step down, or would that be a futile gesture with 3 games to go?
Oh, put me in the spot there. Well, I said in the pod 2 weeks ago after the Cup semi that the board should show a bit of management and take him out the firing line. Obviously, they've saw fit not to do that, and the Kenny Miller and Lee Wallace fallout deflected partially from the result. I don't think he'll resign. I think that the responsibility switching on to the likes of maybe Jimmy Nicholl and Jonathan Johansson may well be counterproductive. I don't know how much of a different voice Jimmy Nicholl would necessarily offer the players for the final 3 games, but it's a difficult one, Ross. This is all the overriding factor for me in all of this is a lot of this has been compounded by self-inflicted errors, and it's difficult to see them amassing the necessary number of points to finish where they want to finish in the table. I mean, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that they could lose all 3 remaining games.
I don't even want to think about that, to be honest, David. I could not imagine the state I would be in if we lost all 3 games. But Frankie mentioned a couple of minutes ago that things seemed to change a little bit, and the structure certainly changed when Morelos was brought on. And a kind of a running feature on a few of these episodes of the pod that we've had so far in the past few weeks has been this kind of Morelos versus Jason Cummings debate. And it was something we spoke about last week as well, as we kind of said it's likely that Murty will play one up top against Celtic, which he did. Who would you play? Would you play Morelos or would you play Cummings? And I think we weren't all necessarily in agreement, but the kind of consensus was that we would probably go with Morelos up top. Obviously, Cummings last week, he did himself no disservice and he got his goal and he did what he had to do against Hearts. But today, personally, I was questioning a lot of Cummings' movement. There were times when we needed a player in the box and he'd be out hugging the touchline. And, you kind of were wondering what's he doing there. And actually, Frankie might have a point in that, he was physically intimidated by Beata, who he could not beat once. And for, the vast majority of the game, I thought he was completely ineffective and wasn't making a mark on the game at all. So, Frankie, you said there that things changed a wee bit when Morelos was brought on, and at least the shape and the structure changed. What do you think today shows us about the Morelos versus Cummings debate going forward and going particularly into next season, assuming both of them will be here? Is there a potential partnership there, or is it going to stick with one player playing over the other? And if so, did today give any clarity as to who should be in that starting striker spot?
Clarity, difficult to know until we get through the summer. I mean, I'm not convinced Morelos will be here next season. I think he'll probably be sold to realise some funds to help build the rest of the team. I'm a big fan of Morelos. I've said that a few times on here. I think he's a really good player. I've not particularly enjoyed some of the criticism I've seen of him online the last few weeks, but with every passing game, his faults do become more evident. I mean, again today, I thought he did quite well when he came on, and then he had a daft kick out on the touchline, maybe lucky just to be booked. I mean, that's the way he plays. He plays on the edge, which is fine. Again, he had a decent chance. It was a good ball into him. I forget who from, possibly Tav. He chested it and took it well. To be fair, Boyata, who had a good game today, he got back to make the challenge. So Morelos is still raw. It's easy to forget he's not quite 22, so he's still learning. Cummings, I think, is pretty much the same age, if not a wee touch older. Possibly a less top flight experience. I mean, he did play a few games when he was about 17 or 18 for Hibs in the Premiership before they got relegated, and obviously he did very well down there in the season. Both the teams, both us and Hibs, were down there. But again, he looks very raw. They're two different types of player. Could they play together? I think so. Unfortunately, it depends what formation. 4-4-2 isn't very fashionable nowadays, so it means one of them either playing just behind the other or one of the other one out wide. And I think in the Falkirk game in the Scottish Cup, Cummings played on the left-hand side, and he did quite well, scored a hat-trick. And to be fair, I think they swapped positions a few times as well, and it worked quite well. So to answer your question, yeah, I think they can play together. I don't think it should be a case of one or the other, but certainly I think today, I don't think Cummings was the right choice. Credit to the guy, he played well last week and probably deserved his chance, but I think if we were going to play him, then it should have been behind Morelos and instead of Windass.
I completely agree. I think that would have been if not him behind Morelos, then Morelos behind him, one way or the other. I think Morelos does offer a lot, kind of back to goal and bringing other players into play, and he contributes a great deal outside the penalty area. But I think you're absolutely right that they could have been on there, they could have been playing together. But David, we've said before on the podcast that Cummings has been kind of crying out for a chance, and what does Jason Cummings have to do to get in this team ahead of Alfredo Morelos? Well, he's been given the biggest chance he could get today, and for me, he failed to take it. This is a player who, for all intents and purposes, he's kind of playing every game as an audition to try and win his contract here next season, because otherwise he's back down sitting on the bench at Forest. Does today give you any direction as to whether we should or shouldn't be signing Jason Cummings permanently in the summer?
I can see why you might be disappointed in his performance today, Ross. Personally, I would, assuming you could get Jason Cummings for the reported fee that's been agreed between Forest and ourselves at 600k, I would deal at that. Whether the speculation surrounding Wes Foderingham possibly going down to Forest might have an impact on that fee. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I would go with him. I think he's got a bit of ability about him. He's lacking physically. Yeah, I think you've seen that there today. He's lacking in sharpness. And dare I say it, as I mentioned there previously a couple of questions ago, the boy's lacking in confidence. When Jason was at his peak playing for Hibs, certainly in a Scottish sense, some of the shots he would bend in and at the goal. There was a bit of power behind his shooting. Some of the shots he was trying to hit today, they were half-hearted sclaffs, and that could be timing. There could be a multitude of reasons behind that. But I think fundamentally it's confidence. Now, you mentioned there that he was drifting out to the left. I think that may well have been something that was tactical, because when he dropped out left, you saw Josh Windass pushing further up towards the Celtic centre halves, and then obviously when Rangers fell back in to their normal shape to defend the ball in wide areas, I think you've seen Cummings going back up top, and then Josh Windass coming back into the middle of the park. With regards to Morelos, as Stewart says, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's 21, coming on 22. He's played a long time without a break. Don't forget that the finished season was ran into our pre-season, so he's played for a long time without a break. And whether people would say he's only 21, he should be able to handle it physically. He may not necessarily be physically tired, but he could be mentally tired, and that's leaving aside the fact that he's moved from what's quite a big club with expectations in the Finnish league to obviously moving to us, where the expectation level's significantly higher. So I think you can cut both guys a bit of slack. And to try and just answer your question, yeah, I would go with Jason Cummings, providing we can get him at a price, and we can start to blood him and not place too much responsibility in his young shoulders yet.
I think he makes some valid points, some fair points. Listen, I think we've been rightly critical of a number of players in the side today, and we're fully justified in doing that, because the football that was served up to us as fans was not good enough and was really disappointing and a letdown. But David, I'll start with yourself. For you, did any players get pass marks today? Was there any positives you can take from the game?
No positives at all. The only positive you could take is it wasn't a record scoreline, which a couple of weeks ago in the pod I thought was a distinct possibility. And if Celtic, if it wasn't for some poor finishing and a couple of reasonable saves from Jack Annick, I think it could have been a record scoreline today. So, the goalkeeper, he acquitted himself reasonably well. His kicking was pretty poor. Other guys in the team, there was some, without, going through them one by one, there was some guys that looked as though they were playing, maybe trying a wee bit more than others. Some look as if they're carrying injuries. Some don't look 100% fit. Then you mentioned Morelos. Stewart said there, a totally inexplicable kick out in the touchline, which could have cost us. If we went down to 10 men. No, there was no pass marks at all. It's a performance which, sadly, these players, in my opinion, a lot of them don't deserve to wear the Rangers jersey.
Scathing words there, David. Frankie, do you agree? Do you agree with David and think that no player gets pass marks today?
Well, I think Annick has to get pass marks. I think he did pretty well. He started off, I was quite worried when he came out of his box and headed the ball away in the first few minutes, but after that he seemed to settle down. His distribution was poor. I think he sliced the ball 2 or 3 times out the park in the first half. It was better after half time. But yeah, if it wasn't for him, I think it would certainly have been at least 2 or 3 more goals, because he made a few good saves. I don't think they were world class or anything like that, but more sort of run of the mill. But he certainly did the job that was asked of him. I don't think he was at fault for any of the goals, so to speak. So I think if you had to give somebody a 7 out of 10, he'd be your man. Other than that, Jason Holt, I thought he did no too bad. I think he was one of the few players that seemed able to had the energy and the discipline to try and get forward at the right time, but also try and do the defensive work. I don't think he was helped by Windass doing his usual disappearing act, and I think we've already discussed Dorrans enough. In terms of Morelos, we have lost out because he got booked, so he's got to miss the Hibs game, and I think McCrory is as well. So without very many defenders, Alves seems to be unfit more than he's fit. Cardozo couldn't even make the bench today, or last week, which was a bit of a surprise. Bates is back in training, but whether or not he's back fit in time for the Hibs game, or wants to risk his ankle ahead of his move to Germany, remains to be seen. So, yeah, there's not very many positives to take out today. But Jack Annick, I think, is one of the few guys that can hold his head high tonight, and there's not often you can say that after losing 5 goals as a goalkeeper. Absolutely.
I thought he was thrown into a very hostile environment, obviously, and it was not an easy task that was given to him. I'm like yourself, that first minute when he comes out and heads the ball from outside his own penalty area and then boots it into the crowd to clear it was a heart and mouth moment. But he made some decent saves, which compared to the rest of the performance looked good. But Jason Holt as well, yeah, full of energy, full of running, showed a wee bit of fight compared to the rest of them. It's a shame he kind of can't back that up with the ability and the quality to match. But I think we've covered it enough. Today was a humiliation. Today was an abysmal display, and I'm sure, like me, you guys want to move on as quickly as possible and try and put this one behind us. So moving away onto more optimistic pastures. It looks like the search for the manager is coming to a close, and the media seems to be pretty confident now that the deal is done and Steven Gerrard is going to be the next man in the dugout at Ibrox. Now, obviously, it's been a long, hard managerial search since Caixinha left us back last year. And to go for a manager that has never managed before is certainly unexpected and didn't seem to be what a lot of the fans were looking for. And there seemed to be a bit of confusion, to be kind, and a bit of anger coming from some supporters when the name was being so heavily linked, and then the rumours didn't go away, because usually these things will be quashed pretty quickly if it's untrue. So Frankie, coming to you first, what was your initial gut reaction when you heard Steven Gerrard was in the frame? I
think excitement and fear, unfortunately. To be honest, it's really difficult to analyse. In terms of a profile, you didn't get much bigger than Steven Gerrard. He's been one of the best midfielders in the United Kingdom for certainly in a generation. You ask any Liverpool fan or probably any fan of English football, and they'll name him in their first 11 of the last 20, 30 years every day of the week. And so in that respect, it's exciting. The guy is clearly knowledgeable. He's clearly wanting to go on and be a manager at the highest level, and if he can do that at Rangers, fantastic. But he has absolutely no experience, and to go from promoting our under-20 manager as caretaker for the better part of 6 months to Liverpool's under-18 manager I find it bizarre, and it does give me the fear it's a huge risk, and I just don't know if we can afford it. And I mean, I did run a poll on our main site, and we did one in the forum as well, and they were pretty similar in that I think most fans are undecided on it. So it is a huge risk. It's a gamble. I can see why they've taken it. I can understand the comparisons made with Souness arriving in 1986. I don't think they're completely valid. I think the context is completely different. Is it going to pay off? Only time will tell, but I can't say I'm overly enthused. But I think it looks like it's going to happen now for sure.
Is it not, you say we've gone with an under-20s manager for 6 months and now we've gone to an under-18s manager. Is it not a little bit disingenuous or a bit unfair to compare Graham Murty and Steven Gerrard, one of whom captained England to World Cups and won, over 110 caps for his country, captained his sides pretty much single-handedly to one of the most memorable Champions League wins in the history of the competition, played at the highest level in England and across Europe for a number of years, and the other guy played for Reading for a bit. I know what you're saying about the fact that he's not been a manager, but surely the guy's a winner, and to compare him just as a youth coach like Graham Murty, is that not a little bit unfair?
No, you're right. Nobody can argue about the guy's CV. It's fantastic. I mean, I think it'd been a wee bit unfair on Murty. Murty never won the Champions League or a huge amount of trophies, but he had a decent career in the English divisions, and he played several times for Scotland as well. So he's not exactly inexperienced himself. So, yeah, listen, Gerrard is a great name, and to say I'm not excited I would be lying, honestly. And I think any Rangers fan, as much as we're maybe worried about it, we're all excited. And as long as the process is followed properly, in that the guy's given money to spend, and we're not throwing money at Mexican alcoholics, then maybe it'll work. But I don't think you can blame anybody for having doubts either, Russ.
David, how about yourself? What were your immediate reactions when you heard that Gerrard was going to be the man?
Initially, Ross, disbelief. I didn't believe it for a second. I just thought it was a name, and then obviously when I started hearing things, like Frankie's saying there, you can't help but get excited. Steven Gerrard's a big name in world football, but this smacks of the board being at Vegas and sitting at a craps table and going all in whilst they've got their last chance saloon bourbon up in the bar. I mean, they're hanging their reputations on the inexperience of, albeit a playing legend. I think a lot of his how successful he might be will hinge on who he takes with him. The speculation's been that he's going to take Gary McAllister as his number 2, and the guy that's been assisting him in the Liverpool under-18s, Tom Culshaw. Obviously, he was a teammate of Gary McAllister's during the Gerard Houllier years. So, yeah, I hope that he's well guided. I think the guy himself, as a winner, as Stewart was saying there, I think that counts for a lot. I went to the under-20s game at Ibrox when, unfortunately, Aidan Wilson gave a penalty away in the first couple of minutes and Liverpool ran out 4-1. And the big thing that struck me from a footballing perspective was that he was very observant, Stephen. But when the Liverpool players slowed their tempo down a wee bit, one of the words that he used, and he did shout at them, he was audible amongst the two enclosures in the main stands, and the word he was using was quicker. And that this season is so evident in what Rangers do. and a playing style, how they knock the ball about. It's very laboured, it's very slow. And I'd like to think, with the best will in the world, that somebody like Steven Gerrard and Gary McAllister, for that matter, would come in and would make the play, far quicker. By all accounts, if he comes, and it's still an if just now, he's not been confirmed. He's going to bring a fitness fanatic. In fact, Charlie Adams, been on his Twitter feed saying that he takes fitness very, very seriously, and he will get the players fit. Now, obviously, at the start of the season, Michael Hallam went on record and saying, I don't feel fit playing under Pedro Caixinha. There's obviously been a hangover with that, and I think that players will get sharper. But again, to get quality out of players, you need that quality to be there. There's only so much that a coach stroke manager can eke out of players. I'd like to think that Stevie would instill a confidence and belief in these players, and that you might see a different side to some of the players that I said maybe don't deserve to wear the jersey. But I would strongly imagine that if he does accept a job and is appointed, whether it be this in the next few days or the next couple of weeks, that there'll be a clear out. And as Stewart said there, obviously they might need to pay off guys like Carlos Pena to give Stevie a fighting chance. But again, until Stevie's announced, then it's basically it's all speculation, isn't it?
It is, of course, and actually it's worth us pointing out now, like we mentioned it earlier, we're recording this on Sunday night, and there's every chance that by the time it's broadcast and you guys are listening to it, there's every chance that Mr. Gerrard is sat up in the Blue Room, or is he's signed the contract and it's a done deal and it's all been announced. Of course, it could be Alex Neil, who knows. I think what this whole episode has told us is that the manager market at the moment is not particularly competitive, and I think the fact that Gerrard looks by all accounts that he's going to be the man, I think that tells us a lot about not necessarily the calibre of manager that we can attract, but the calibre of manager that's actually available right now just because of circumstance. There's a lot of talk about how we should go for Frank de Boer, for example. Pete on the podcast last week was really good, and he told us about some reports coming out of the Netherlands saying that Frank de Boer, was not interested in the job and has knocked it back and rebuffed any approach. I think reports of Giovanni van Bronckhorst, who's just won another league title over at Feyenoord, were pie in the sky and would never happen. So really, who are we left with? We're left with, like I say, Alex Neil, or maybe Neil Warnock if he doesn't get Cardiff promoted. So, Frankie, when you see that these are the names that are in the frame, is your Alex Neils or your Neil Warnocks, maybe your Steve Clarks, can you blame the board for wanting to take a punt on someone more exciting, or would you personally have plumped for someone who's not necessarily had experience of winning, but has at least had experience of managing a group of players?
It's a good question. I think on the forum, actually, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a similar discussion in terms of the way we play. I think a lot of the guys in the forum were looking for a bit of a more pragmatic manager in the mould of Walter Smith. Unfortunately, there isn't very many Walters going about. So I think when we discuss pragmatism, then it does take you back to guys like Warnock and Alex Neil, both of whom they're certainly none of the most glamorous in names, but they've done quite well in their careers so far. So, yeah, it's hard. Do you go for that unglamorous nature that maybe won't inspire very many fans, or do you go for the big name who can do that? And I mean, there's no doubt a lot of supporters will get behind Gerrard, but I think the point we'll have to make here and have to emphasise is the process. Are we now starting again here? Are we going to get rid of 15 players, and are we to give Gerrard 2 or 3 years to bring his guys in and challenge Celtic, or are we going to give him £20 million tomorrow? I mean, I think there's been some rumours about investment. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to come from, how true these are. These tend to always come out after defeats such as today. But as I say, the process is key. I mean, I think both you guys have mentioned Gerrard's a winner, and I think that's something we definitely need in the dressing room. There's no doubt about that. I mean, today we lost that game and we lost it big, and there's too many losers in that dressing room, so we need somebody to turn it around. Gerrard might well be that man. Alex Neil didn't have the most glamorous career. However, he's done well as a manager. So there's doubts either way, but I don't think that should excuse the board. I mean, I was quite strong in my criticism the other week there. I think to not have somebody in place by now, I really think it's appalling. I mean, we've known the situation with Pedro arguably since last June when we got knocked out by Progress. So we're almost a year down the line. I don't think that the excuse washes that there's not very many good managers out there. There is, and we need to find it. It's their responsibility to find one. It's their responsibility to back him properly. And in terms of that, do we make changes at boardroom level as well? Is Stuart Robertson the right person? What about Andrew Dixon in the administrative side? I think that the Carlos Peña signing's a good example of that. I cannot believe that we signed that guy. I really don't. It's incredible the amount of money that we've wasted on, and somebody should be paying with that with a job.
I think it's a really, really valid point about how the club's run on the football and business side. And I would be personally amazed if there's not questions asked at director level about, how tenable is the position of Stuart Robertson in particular, and Andrew Dixon's, head of football administration or whatever his title is. I think, these are really valid concerns shared by the vast, vast majority of the support. And I'm sure the guys on the board know how we're feeling and know that it's not acceptable to wait this long to get a permanent manager in place, because when has that ever been the case at any other club? So it's not acceptable, and the fans shouldn't lie down and say, this is fine, because they are legitimate and genuine questions that need to be asked. And I think someone will be paying with his job. I think heads will roll, because there have been too many instances of things going wrong, whether it's players that need to be suspended or alcoholic Mexicans that need to be punted back to Mexico because we can't look after them. It's all wasting money, it's all wasting time, and it's wasting PR. Which leads us actually nicely onto my next question, which I'm going to pose to you, David, is about things like PR. And to circle back to Steven Gerrard, for me, a big part of this appointment is the fact that the club can kind of benefit from this in a PR capacity and in a brand capacity, if you know what I mean. Do you think that this appointment could have one eye on that kind of thing? We know that the board is kind of flooded with businessmen and business guys rather than football guys. So if they got one eye on the fact that the world will be looking at this and we can increase the brand awareness globally?
Definitely, Ross. Definitely. The Steven Gerrard, I mean, they don't come much bigger in terms of football and personality in Great Britain. So, and that can extend, worldwide. He's a phenomenal player in his day. And he is a marketable commodity. If they manage to get his signature on a contract, I'm of no doubt that he will be a very viable bargaining chip when it comes to attracting inward investment from external parties. However, the flip side of that is, let's say he's afforded a reasonable war chest to make a serious go at winning the title. Not just competing with Celtic, actually winning the title, because that's basically what he's been charged with. Now, whether that's the expectation is that he's going to be, he'll get a season to get his feet under the table, make some signings, and it'll be gradually and make a real push for it in 2 seasons' time, remains to be seen. Or whether the guy himself wants to, embrace that pressure, because let's face it, the boy's lived with pressure all his professional days. He's been a Liverpool captain since he was 21. He's been England captain, so he's lived with a lot of expectations during his professional career. So, the board have obviously, they've obviously come out and publicly stated that they're talking to him, and I think that they're obviously trying to steal some of the limelight that's been sadly lacking from Rangers for a significant period of time. And there's no doubt that he will shine a spotlight back in the football club. He'll raise the profile of the league, certainly in a British context, and in Europe, because he's got that stature in the game. And judging by the reaction in the media, he's obviously got certain factions within the footballing world a bit worried, given the reaction to his name being mentioned. given the Celtic manager, how his response when he was asked about him on Friday there, that maybe Brendan's not fancying being demoted to not being the big noise in the Scottish League. But he's imminent arrival if, and I stress the word if, he becomes the manager. So, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that they will bring benefits. Now, but it possibly might be in negotiations with regards to image rights and what have you. So that will come out in the wash if he is appointed. But I think it can only be a good thing. I think the support are dying to get behind someone that can genuinely, evoke excitement, genuine excitement. If he was to become the Rangers manager, it would be the biggest news in Scottish football since Paul Gascoigne signed, bar none. So I'll put some faith in him. If he gets Gary McAllister in and they get a good network round about him and they go off to a flyer and the board genuinely back him with serious money, whether that's putting their hands in their own pockets collectively, or whether they entice external investors to furnish him with the requisite amount of funds, then I think it could well be a successful venture.
Yeah, look, I think you make a really good point about how it is exciting, and for me, it's exciting because it might well fail. It might fail, but I'm a hell of a lot more excited about Steven Gerrard than I am about Derek McInnes. That's for sure. I certainly didn't feel this excited, and yeah, this afraid, and it's going to be a hell of a ride, at least because there will be a spotlight on the club again. I hate seeing Brendan Rodgers go on like Soccer AM or go on TalkSport. And we've not had that for too long now, because we are a big club up in Scotland. We are a football institution in Great Britain, and we should have that limelight. But because we've been kicked when we're down, and we've had everyone from the football to the media to the politicians trying to kill off the club, we've suffered for that. Of course we have, and the brand suffered and the PR suffered. So to get back in the limelight and back being seen as a big club in Britain is really important. I think it's a good step towards doing that. But something that would really help along those lines is a compliant media. And kind of the last point that I want to raise on this, and Frankie, I'll ask you first, is the reaction that we've seen to and Dave is right to keep pointing out this hasn't been announced yet, and we have previous for assuming that a manager is job done and then it all falls through. So we should have a word of caution there. But assuming this is a done deal, the Scottish media and the Scottish football media and Scottish football personalities have been absolutely scathing of Gerrard making this decision to come up to us, of the boards making the decision to go for Gerrard, and yet the noise is coming from England and from the English media and from people that have worked with him are very different and are saying how exciting and brave and bold it is, and it's a good step for him to make his first move into management. Frankie, did you expect anything less from the media?
No, definitely not. I mean, the contrast is fairly interesting. The English media always bump up their own, always do. I had every major championships to do it, and they always come back down to earth with a bump, usually after 3 group stage games. But so they can't always take what they say with any great excitement either. It wasn't a surprise to see Tom English and Graham Spears be negative. There was several other people were in the same vein. I think some of the criticism was fair enough. I mean, I think I've shared it as well on here this evening. So I think we've got to be careful not to ignore that criticism and try and be constructive, as I say. I mean, Gerrard, there's no doubt he brings a big PR. He's a big name. I think that the discussion in the English media over the weekend shows just how big. So I think the problem we've got is, do we have the right people in place to manage that? I'm not so sure about that either, unfortunately, without trying to be overly negative here. At the end of the day, the decision seems to be made. I think it seems 90% likely that the guy's going to be in charge. I think you're trying your best, Ross, and David's made some good comments as well. I think it's now important to get behind the guy and try and be positive. And we can only hope the board supply them with the correct finance to do that. I think what we also need is clarity. Are we too fickle to expect to win the league next year? Are we capable as fans? Are we mature enough as fans to say, let's give it 2 years, let's give it 3 years? I'm not sure. So Gerrard is going to have to hit the ground running, and we can only hope he does that. at the start of June when we have our Europa Cup games.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but the football never seems to stop, does it? Especially with us going in at the first stage of the Europa League qualifiers. But listen, I think that wraps it up really nicely, and it's probably time for us all to close the book on a particularly tough weekend at Rangers after a disappointing loss again against Celtic, and hopefully we can look forward with a little bit of optimism to some good news coming out of Ibrox this week. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us here at the Gersnet Podcast. All that's left for me to say is thanks to our two guests this evening. We've had Stewart Franklin and David Fraser, and also a huge thank you to Graham, our audio engineer. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to share it on all the usual forums. Obviously, we're quite a new podcast. We'd appreciate that. And if you'd like to find out any more Rangers information or friendly Rangers discussion, please do check out the Gersnet forum at www.gersnet.co.uk. Really quickly, also just want to give a quick shout out to a fellow Blue Nose pod. If you're anything like us, you'll be crying out for as much Rangers content as you can get. So if you've not done so already, definitely go and check out our friends over at We Welcome the Chase podcast. They're always looking at things from a slightly different angle, and they've put together a really slick and enjoyable show. So we definitely recommend that you download that and have a listen. As always, we'll be back next week when we'll be dissecting the Rangers versus Kilmarnock clash, and hopefully everyone will be feeling a little bit more upbeat. Until then, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week.